The snow fell hard that December night, each flake like a tiny dagger of ice against Tessa Monroe's skin. She pulled her bright red coat tighter around her body and quickened her pace down the empty street. The wind howled through the bare trees, and the streetlights cast strange shadows on the white ground. She was heading home from a late meeting with a client family, her mind full of worries about the children she worked with every day as a social worker. Then she heard it. A small voice barely louder than the wind. "Ma? Ma." Tessa stopped walking. Her heart jumped in her chest. She turned around slowly, her brown eyes scanning the darkness. At first she saw nothing but snow and shadows. Then, about 20 feet behind her, she spotted a tiny figure in pink and purple clothing. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, stumbled through the snow with no coat, no hat, no gloves. Her small arms wrapped around her own body, and her lips looked blue even from a distance. "Oh my God," Tessa whispered. She ran toward the child, her boots crunching in the fresh snow. "Baby, are you okay? Where are your parents?" The little girl looked up at Tessa with wide, terrified eyes. Tears had frozen on her cheeks and her whole body shook with cold. "My daddy didn't come home last night," she said, her voice breaking. "I waited and waited, but he didn't come. I went to find him." Tessa knelt down in the snow, not caring that the wet cold soaked through her jeans. She wrapped her arms around the freezing child and pulled her close. "You're safe now, sweetheart. I've got you. Can you tell me your name?" "Amber," the little girl whispered. "Amber Pierce. My daddy is Julian Pierce. He always comes home, but not last night. Not today. I got scared." The name meant nothing to Tessa, but the situation meant everything. This child had been alone long enough to become this cold, this scared. Where was her father? Where was anyone who should have been watching her? "Amber, honey, where do you live? Can you show me your house?" Amber pointed down the street with a small, trembling finger. "The big white house. The one with the tall gates." Tessa picked up the child, feeling how light she was, how fragile. She walked quickly in the direction Amber had pointed, her mind racing through possibilities. Each one felt worse than the last. A father who abandoned his child. A father who was hurt somewhere. A father who was dead. None of the options were good. The house Amber pointed to was not just big. It was massive, a 3-story mansion with stone columns and iron gates. The kind of house that screamed money and power. The gates stood open, which struck Tessa as odd. She carried Amber through them and up the long driveway. Her boots left prints in the untouched snow. No one had been in or out of this house in hours, maybe longer. "Do you have a key, Amber?" The little girl shook her head. "Daddy always opens the door. Or Patricia does." "Who's Patricia?" "Daddy's helper at work. She comes here sometimes." Tessa tried the front door. It swung open, unlocked. Her social worker instincts screamed at her that something was very wrong. She stepped inside, calling out, "Hello? Is anyone home? This is Tessa Monroe, I'm a social worker. I found Amber outside." No answer. Just the echo of her own voice in the huge, empty house. The inside of the mansion was beautiful but cold. Not cold in temperature but in feeling. Everything looked expensive and perfect, but nothing looked lived in. Nothing looked like a home where a small child should be growing up. Tessa carried Amber to the living room and set her down on a cream-colored sofa. "Stay right here, baby. I need to check if anyone else is in the house." She walked through room after room, calling out, getting no response. The kitchen looked like it hadn't been used in days. Mail piled up on the counter, still in envelopes. In what must have been Julian Pierce's office, a computer sat on a desk, its screen dark. A framed photo on the desk showed a handsome man with light brown hair and blue eyes, holding a much younger Amber. A beautiful woman stood next to them, her smile bright and full of life. Tessa picked up the phone on the desk and called 911. "This is Tessa Monroe. I'm at 1247 Elmwood Drive. I found a 5-year-old girl wandering in the snow. Her name is Amber Pierce. She says her father, Julian Pierce, didn't come home last night. The house is empty. I think something might have happened to him." The operator's voice stayed calm. "Stay with the child. Officers are on their way." Tessa hung up and returned to Amber. The little girl had curled into a ball on the sofa, still shivering despite the warm house. Tessa found a blanket and wrapped it around her, then sat down and pulled Amber into her lap. "It's going to be okay, sweet girl. The police are coming. We'll find your daddy." "Is he dead?" Amber asked, her voice so small that Tessa's heart broke. "No, honey. Don't think like that. I'm sure there's an explanation. Maybe he had to work late and his phone died. Maybe his car broke down. There are lots of reasons why he might not have made it home." But even as she said the words, Tessa didn't quite believe them. A man with this much money wouldn't just disappear. He would have people to call, people to help him. Unless something bad had happened. Something really bad. Amber pressed her face into Tessa's red coat. He's the only one I have. My mommy died when I was 2. I don't remember her much. Just Daddy. He can't be gone too. Tears filled Tessa's eyes. She had worked with traumatized children for years, but something about this little girl got to her in a way that others hadn't. Maybe it was finding her alone in the snow, so vulnerable and scared. Maybe it was the desperate hope in her voice when she talked about her father. Maybe it was the way Amber clung to her like Tessa was the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly become terrifying. You're not alone, Amber. I promise you you're not alone. I'm going to stay with you until we figure this out. The police arrived 15 minutes later. Officer James Mitchell, a tall man with kind eyes, took Tessa's statement while his partner searched the house more thoroughly. Tessa explained everything, finding Amber in the snow, the empty house, the unlocked door, the pile of mail. We'll put out an alert for Julian Pierce, Officer Mitchell said. Check hospitals, check accident reports. Miss Monroe, you did the right thing bringing her inside and calling us. That little girl could have frozen to death out there. The words made Tessa feel sick. She looked at Amber, who had finally stopped shivering and had fallen asleep in her arms, exhausted from fear and cold. What happens to her now? Tessa asked. We'll need to contact Child Protective Services. She can't stay here alone. I work for CPS, Tessa said quickly. I'm a licensed social worker. I can stay with her tonight, make sure she's okay. Give you time to find her father without traumatizing her more by taking her away from her home. Officer Mitchell looked at his partner, who nodded. That would actually be helpful. Let me just get your credentials and contact information. Tessa gave him everything he needed, then carried the sleeping Amber upstairs. She found what must be the child's bedroom, a space filled with toys and books and princess decorations. She tucked Amber into bed, pulling the covers up to her chin. Please let her daddy be okay, Tessa whispered into the dark room. This little girl has already lost so much. She sat in a chair beside the bed, watching Amber sleep, and waited for morning. Waited for answers. Waited for whatever came next, knowing that her life and this child's life had just become tangled together in ways she couldn't begin to understand. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering everything in white, hiding all the tracks that could have told them where Julian Pierce had gone. Have you ever wondered what you would do if you found a child alone and afraid? Would you walk away or would you step into their story not knowing where it might lead? This is just the beginning of Tessa and Amber's journey. If you want to know what happens next, subscribe to this channel and drop a comment below telling me what you think happened to Julian. Your support helps me bring you more stories like this one. Morning came with bright, cold sunlight that made the snow outside sparkle like diamonds. Tessa woke in the chair beside Amber's bed, her neck stiff and her back aching. She checked her phone. 7 messages from Officer Mitchell. She opened them one by one, her heart pounding. The first message, found him. The second, St. Mary's Hospital. Car accident on Route 7. Unconscious but stable. The third, you should bring the daughter. Tessa stood up quickly, trying not to wake Amber yet. She needed a moment to think, to process. Julian Pierce was alive. That was the important thing. He was hurt but alive. Amber wouldn't lose her only parent. But a car accident meant injuries, maybe serious ones. It meant recovery time. It meant this little girl's world was still turned upside down. She went to the window and looked out at the snow-covered yard. In daylight, she could see how beautiful the property was. A swing set stood near a line of trees, untouched snow piled on its seats. A garden, dormant for winter, spread out in neat rows. Everything about this place spoke of money, of privilege, of a life most people could only dream about. But money hadn't kept Julian Pierce safe. Money hadn't kept his daughter from wandering alone in a snowstorm. Miss Tessa? She turned. Amber sat up in bed, rubbing her eyes. Did they find my daddy? Tessa sat down on the edge of the bed and took Amber's small hand in hers. Yes, baby. They found him. He was in a car accident, but he's okay. He's at the hospital and we're going to go see him right now. Amber's face crumpled. Is he hurt bad? I don't know yet. But he's alive and the doctors are taking good care of him. Let's get you dressed and fed and then we'll go to him. An hour later, Tessa pulled her old car up to the emergency entrance of St. Mary's Hospital. She had dressed Amber in clean clothes she found in the child's closet, a blue sweater and jeans, and had managed to find some cereal for breakfast. Amber had eaten very little, too worried about her father to care about food. Inside the hospital, Officer Mitchell met them. He woke up about an hour ago. he told Tessa quietly while Amber stood close to her side. Asking for his daughter. The doctors say he was out on Route 7 around 9 p.m. night before last. Car slid on ice, went into a ditch. Looks like he hit his head and was unconscious in the car for several hours before someone found him. He's got a concussion, 3 broken ribs and a broken wrist. But he'll be fine. Can we see him? Room 304. But Miss Monroe, I should warn you. He's pretty upset about what happened to Amber. About her being alone. The guilt is eating at him. Tessa nodded. She understood that kind of guilt. She had seen it in the eyes of countless parents who felt like they had failed their children. They took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Amber's hand gripped Tessa's tightly, her small body tense with worry. Outside room 304, Tessa knelt down and looked into the child's eyes. Your daddy might look a little scary with bandages and machines around him. But he's okay. Remember that. No matter what you see, he's okay. Amber nodded, tears already forming. Tessa pushed open the door. Julian Pierce lay in the hospital bed, his left wrist in a cast, bandages wrapped around his head, dark bruises spreading across his face. His eyes were closed, and for a moment, Tessa thought he was asleep. Then those eyes opened and she saw they were blue just like in the photo. Beautiful blue eyes, now filled with pain and worry. Amber, he breathed. Daddy. Amber pulled away from Tessa and ran to the bed. Julian tried to sit up but winced in pain. Tessa hurried over and carefully lifted Amber so she could see her father without hurting him. Baby girl, Julian whispered, tears running down his face. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought you were dead, Amber sobbed. I thought you left me like Mommy did. Never. I would never leave you. There was an accident and I couldn't get home. But I'm here now. I'm here. Tessa stood back, giving them their moment, but Amber reached for her hand and pulled her closer. This is Miss Tessa. She found me in the snow. She saved me, Daddy. Julian's eyes met Tessa's and something passed between them. Gratitude, yes, but something else too. Something neither of them could name yet. Thank you, he said, his voice breaking. I don't know how to thank you enough. My daughter could have died because I couldn't get to her. You didn't do anything wrong, Tessa said gently. You were hurt. You were unconscious. You couldn't help what happened. But she was alone. In the snow. Because of me. Because of an accident. Not because of you. Tessa pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down, still holding Amber. I'm Tessa Monroe. I'm a social worker. I found Amber around 9 p.m. last night, and I stayed with her at your house. The police contacted me this morning. I need to pay you, Julian said immediately. For your time for taking care of her. I need to make this right. Tessa started to protest, but something in his eyes stopped her. He needed to do this. He needed to feel like he was taking care of his daughter, even from a hospital bed. Okay, she said softly. If it makes you feel better, okay. A doctor came in then, a kind-faced black woman named Dr. Rachel Foster. Mr. Pierce, I'm glad to see you awake and talking. But you need rest. Lots of it. You're going to be here for at least 3 more days while we monitor that concussion. 3 days. Julian's face went pale. What about Amber? Who will take care of her? Dr. Foster looked at Tessa. Is there family we can call? Someone who can stay with your daughter? My mother lives in Paris, Julian said. I have a business partner, Ben, but he has 3 kids of his own. There's Patricia, my assistant, but she's not really set up for childcare. I'll stay with her, Tessa heard herself say. The words came out before she could think about them. I'll take care of Amber until you're released. Julian stared at her. You don't have to do that. You don't even know us. I know Amber. And I know she needs someone right now. I'm trained for this. It's literally my job. I'll pay you whatever you need. Double your rate. Triple it. I don't care about the cost. We can talk about that later. Right now, what matters is making sure Amber feels safe. Dr. Foster smiled. That's settled then. Mr. Pierce, you rest. Let this young woman help you. After the doctor left, Julian reached out his good hand toward Tessa. She took it, feeling the warmth of his fingers against hers. Why are you doing this? He asked. Really? Tessa looked down at Amber, who had fallen asleep in her lap, exhausted from the emotional morning. Because when I found her in the snow last night, she asked me if her daddy was dead. And I promised her she wasn't alone. I don't break promises to children. Something in Julian's expression shifted. His eyes held hers for a long moment. Neither do I, he said quietly. Thank you, Tessa Monroe. Thank you for being there when I couldn't be. They talked for another hour, Julian giving her all the information she would need. Patricia's phone number. the alarm code for the house, where to find Amber's favorite foods. He told her about the accident, how the road had been icy, how he had swerved to avoid a deer and lost control. He had hit his head on the steering wheel despite the airbag, knocked unconscious instantly. By the time someone found his car in the ditch, it had been 7 hours. 7 hours, he repeated, his voice hollow. Amber was alone for 7 hours before you found her. Anything could have happened. But it didn't, Tessa said firmly. She's safe. You're safe. That's what matters now. When visiting hours ended, Tessa took Amber home. The little girl cried for the first 10 minutes of the drive, then fell asleep, emotionally drained. Tessa carried her into the big empty house and put her to bed in her own room. Then she sat in Julian Pierce's office and looked at the photo on his desk again. The beautiful woman must have been Amber's mother. Julian's wife. Dead 3 years, Amber had said. So Julian had been alone with his daughter for 3 years, trying to be both mother and father, running a company, living in this huge house. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. This is Julian. Patricia gave me your number. I meant what I said about paying you. Whatever you need. Also, thank you again. I can't say it enough. Tessa typed back. Just focus on getting better. Amber needs you healthy. She needs someone kind too. Someone like you. Tessa stared at the message for a long time before she responded. Get some rest, Mr. Pierce. But she was smiling as she put the phone down. Outside, the snow had started falling again, gentle this time, covering the world in fresh white. Inside, Tessa settled into the guest bedroom that Patricia had told her about, and she thought about the man in the hospital bed and the little girl sleeping down the hall. She had walked into something much bigger than a simple rescue. She could feel it in her bones. This was the beginning of a story that would change all of their lives. She just didn't know how yet. 3 days passed like a strange dream. Tessa fell into a routine with Amber that felt both natural and surreal. Every morning they woke up in the big house, ate breakfast together in the kitchen, and then drove to the hospital to visit Julian. Every afternoon they came home and did puzzles or read books or played in the snow. Every evening, Tessa tucked Amber into bed and sat with her until she fell asleep. Julian improved each day. The bruises on his face faded from deep purple to yellow-green. The doctors removed some of the bandages from his head. He could sit up without wincing in pain. But more than his body healing, Tessa watched his spirit heal too. Every time Amber ran into his hospital room and climbed carefully onto his bed, Julian's face lit up with pure joy. On the 3rd day, Dr. Foster told them Julian could go home the next morning. But you need to take it easy, she warned him. No work for at least 2 weeks. No driving until that wrist heals. You need rest and help. Do you have someone who can stay with you? Julian looked at Tessa. She knew what he was going to ask before he opened his mouth. Can we talk, he said. Privately? Tessa asked Patricia, who had been visiting daily, to take Amber to the hospital cafeteria for ice cream. Once they were alone, Julian gestured for Tessa to sit in the chair beside his bed. I need to ask you something, he began, his voice serious. And I want you to really think about it before you answer. Okay. I can't take care of Amber on my own right now. Not with these injuries. I can barely dress myself, let alone chase after a 5-year-old. Patricia can help during business hours, but she has her own life. My mother offered to fly in from Paris, but she's 68 and not in the best health herself. Ben, my business partner, has offered, but he has his hands full with his own kids. What are you asking, Julian? He took a deep breath. I want to hire you. Full-time. To be Amber's caretaker while I recover. 4 to 6 weeks, maybe longer. You'd live in the guest house on the property. I'd pay you $10,000 a week. Tessa's jaw dropped. $10,000? You'd be available around the clock. Meals with Amber, bedtime, activities, everything. I know it's a lot to ask. You have your own job, your own life. But Amber trusts you. She feels safe with you. I've never seen her bond with someone so quickly, not since her mother died. Julian, that's too much money. It's not enough for what you'd be doing. Please, Tessa. Let me do this. Let me take care of my daughter by hiring someone who actually cares about her. Tessa's mind raced. $10,000 a week. In a month, she could make more money than she made in 6 months at her social work job. She could pay off her student loans. She could finally save for the community center she had always dreamed of opening, a place where at-risk kids could get help and support. But more than the money, she thought about Amber. Sweet, scared Amber who still had nightmares about being alone in the snow. Amber who held Tessa's hand everywhere they went. Amber who had started calling her Miss Tessa, like she was the most important person in the world. What about my job? Tessa asked. I have clients who depend on me. I'll make a donation to your agency. Enough to hire 2 social workers to cover your caseload while you're gone. Whatever it takes. You've thought of everything. Julian smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him. I'm a CEO. Thinking of everything is what I do. Tessa laughed. Then she thought about her small apartment, her tight budget, her constant worry about money. She thought about all the good she could do with that kind of salary. And she thought about Amber, who needed stability and care. Yes, she said. I'll do it. Julian's whole body relaxed. Thank you. God, Tessa, thank you. But I have conditions. I want to set up a schedule that works for both of us. Time for you to be alone with Amber, time for me to have breaks. I'm not trying to replace her parent. I'm trying to help. Whatever you need. We'll figure it out together. Patricia and Amber returned then, and Julian told his daughter the news. Amber squealed with delight and threw her arms around Tessa. You're staying? Really staying? Really staying, sweetheart. That night, Tessa called her supervisor at the social services agency and explained the situation. To her surprise, her supervisor was supportive. Take the opportunity, Tessa. You've been talking about opening a center for kids for years. This could be your chance to make it happen. And frankly, it sounds like this little girl needs you right now. The next morning they brought Julian home. Patricia drove them in Julian's big SUV while Tessa sat in back with Amber. The little girl chattered nonstop, excited to have her daddy coming home, excited that Miss Tessa would be living in their guest house. The guest house turned out to be a small, beautiful cottage at the back of the property. It had a bedroom, a bathroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room with big windows that looked out on the snowy yard. Someone, probably Patricia, had already moved Tessa's things from her apartment. Her clothes hung in the closet. Her books sat on the shelves. Is it okay? Julian asked, leaning heavily on a cane as he stood in the doorway. I wanted you to be comfortable. It's perfect, Tessa said, and she meant it. Over the next week they fell into a new routine. Tessa arrived at the main house every morning at 7. She made breakfast for Amber while Julian rested. After breakfast, Amber went to her kindergarten class, which Patricia drove her to and from. During those hours, Tessa helped Julian with things he couldn't do himself. She changed the bandages on his wrist. She made sure he took his medications. She cooked meals that he could eat with one hand. In the afternoons, when Amber came home, the 3 of them spent time together. They watched movies. They played board games. They built snowmen in the yard. Julian couldn't do much physically, but he was there, present and engaged in a way that Tessa found beautiful. I used to work so much, he admitted one evening after Amber had gone to bed. He and Tessa sat in the living room drinking tea. 16-hour days sometimes. I told myself it was for Amber to give her a good life. But really I was hiding. From the grief of losing my wife. From the fear that I couldn't be the parent Amber needed. You're a good father, Julian. Amber adores you. She adores you too. You know that, right? She talks about you constantly. Miss Tessa this, Miss Tessa that. Tessa smiled. She's an amazing kid. She is. Thanks to her mother's genes. And yours. Don't sell yourself short. Julian looked at her, his blue eyes warm in the lamplight. You're easy to talk to. Has anyone ever told you that? It's part of my job description. This isn't your job right now. This is just 2 people talking. Something in the air shifted, became charged with a feeling Tessa couldn't quite name. She stood up quickly. I should go. Early morning tomorrow. But as she walked back to the guest house through the cold night air, she couldn't stop thinking about the way Julian had looked at her. The warmth in his eyes. The gentleness in his voice. She was falling into something she hadn't expected. Something that scared her almost as much as it thrilled her. Inside the main house, Julian stood at the window and watched Tessa's figure disappear into the guest house. He pressed his good hand against the glass, feeling the cold seep through. He was falling too. And he had no idea what to do about it. 2 weeks into their arrangement, snow fell again, heavy and thick. Amber pressed her nose against the living room window, watching the flakes pile up on the yard. Can we build a snow fort, Miss Tessa? Please? Tessa looked at Julian, who sat on the sofa with his laptop balanced on his good knee. The cast on his wrist prevented him from typing properly, so he used voice-to-text software for his work emails. He looked up and smiled. I think that's a great idea. I can supervise from the porch. An hour later, Tessa and Amber were outside in the cold, packing snow into walls while Julian watched from a chair on the covered porch, wrapped in a thick blue blanket. Amber's laughter filled the air as she showed Tessa how to make the walls smooth and strong. The child's cheeks turned pink from the cold, and her eyes sparkled with joy. "You're good at this," Tessa told her. "Have you built forts before?" "Mommy used to build them with me," Amber said, her voice going quiet. "Before she got sick." Tessa's hands stilled on the snow. This was the first time Amber had mentioned her mother directly. "What was your mommy like?" Amber thought for a moment. "She was pretty. She had yellow hair and green eyes. She always smelled like flowers. She read me stories every night and she made funny voices for all the characters. I was only 2 when she died, but I remember some things. Daddy shows me pictures so I don't forget. I bet she loved you very much." "Daddy says she did. He says she loved us both." Amber patted the snow wall. "Do you think she can see me from heaven?" "I think if heaven is real, she's watching over you every day. And I think she'd be very proud of the girl you're becoming." Amber looked up at Tessa with those big eyes. "Do you think she sent you to help us?" The question made Tessa's breath catch. "I don't know, sweetie. But I'm glad I found you that night." They finished the fort and called Julian down to see it. He moved carefully down the porch steps, leaning on his cane, and examined their work with the seriousness of an architect reviewing blueprints. "This is excellent construction," he declared. "Solid walls, good design. I give it a 10 out of 10. Amber beamed. "Can we have hot chocolate now?" Back inside, Tessa made hot chocolate while Julian and Amber sat at the kitchen table. The kitchen was huge, all white cabinets and marble counters, but Tessa had learned to navigate it over the past 2 weeks. She found it less intimidating now, more like a space where real life happened despite its magazine-worthy appearance. "Tell me about your mother," Julian said as she set mugs in front of them. "You know about my late wife, but I don't know much about your family." Tessa sat down with her own mug. "My mom raised me and my brother by herself. Dad left when I was 8. Mom worked 2 jobs to keep us fed and clothed. She died of cancer 5 years ago." "I'm sorry. That must have been hard." "It was. But she taught me a lot about being strong and taking care of people who need help. That's why I became a social worker." "What about your brother?" "He's in the army, stationed in Germany right now. We video chat when we can, but it's not the same as having him around." Julian nodded slowly. "So you're alone too?" "In a way." "In a way," Tessa agreed. Amber had been listening quietly, sipping her hot chocolate with 2 hands wrapped around the mug. "Miss Tessa, do you get lonely?" The question was so simple, so direct, so childlike in its honesty. Tessa found herself answering with equal honesty. "Sometimes yes. But I have good friends. And now I have you too." "We're not lonely when you're here," Amber said. "Right, Daddy?" Julian's eyes met Tessa's across the table. "Right, baby girl. We're not lonely at all." That evening, after Amber went to bed, Julian asked Tessa to stay for a while. They sat in his office, surrounded by books and papers and the smell of wood polish. He had been working on something all day and he wanted to show her. "I've been thinking about what you said that first day in the hospital. About wanting to help more kids. About your dream of opening a community center." "Julian, you don't have to." He held up his good hand. "Let me finish. I've been thinking about my own life. About how lucky I am to have resources most people can't imagine. And I've been thinking about how I use those resources. Most of my charitable giving goes to big organizations with fancy galas and tax write-offs. But what if I did something more direct? Something that really helps?" He pulled up a document on his laptop and turned the screen toward her. It was a business plan for a youth community center. Detailed, thorough, with budget projections and program ideas. "I had Patricia work on this. It's rough, but it's a start. A place where at-risk kids can come after school. Tutoring, meals, activities, counseling. You would run it? I would fund it." Tessa stared at the screen, her heart pounding. "Julian, this is huge. It's necessary. You see the need every day in your work. I have the money to help meet that need. Why wouldn't I do this?" "Because it's not your responsibility." "Maybe not. But I want it to be. Will you let me help you make this happen?" Tessa looked at him, this man who had stumbled into her life by accident, quite literally. A man who was offering her everything she had ever dreamed of. How could she say no? Why would she say no? "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll let you help." Julian smiled, and it transformed his whole face. He looked younger suddenly, lighter, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "Good. We can start planning as soon as I'm fully recovered." They talked for hours that night, brainstorming ideas for the center. What programs it would offer. What kind of staff they would need. Where it might be located. Julian's business mind came alive, turning her vague dreams into concrete plans. Tessa found herself laughing more than she had in years, caught up in the excitement of possibility. It was past midnight when she finally stood to leave. I should go. Let you rest. Julian stood too, moving slowly because of his healing ribs. Tessa, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you have someone? A boyfriend, I mean. Or girlfriend? Someone waiting for you to finish this job and come home? Her heart skipped. No. No one. I've been single for 2 years. My last relationship ended badly, and I've been focused on work since then. Why? Julian looked like he wanted to say something more, but then he just shook his head. No reason. Just curious. Good night, Tessa. Good night, Julian. She walked back to the guest house in the cold, dark night, her mind spinning. He had asked if she was single. That meant something, didn't it? Or was she reading too much into a simple question? Inside the guest house, she got ready for bed, but sleep wouldn't come. She kept seeing Julian's face, kept hearing his voice, kept thinking about the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. She was developing feelings for him. Real feelings. The kind that went beyond gratitude or professional respect. The kind that made her stomach flutter and her hands shake. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was here to take care of his daughter, to help him recover. She wasn't supposed to fall for her employer. But hearts didn't follow rules. They didn't care about what was supposed to happen. They just felt what they felt. And Tessa's heart was definitely feeling something for Julian Pierce. In the main house, Julian lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. He had almost told her tonight. Almost admitted that he was developing feelings for her. But the timing felt wrong. She was working for him. She might feel pressured if he confessed his growing attraction. He needed to wait. Let his body heal fully. Let their friendship deepen naturally. Then maybe he could tell her that she had become more to him than just his daughter's caretaker. Maybe he could tell her that she was becoming essential to his life in ways he hadn't expected. Maybe he could take the risk of loving again. The 4th week of February arrived with warmer weather. The snow began to melt, leaving patches of brown grass visible in the yard. Julian's ribs had healed enough that he could move without pain. The cast on his wrist would come off in another week. He was getting stronger every day, more like himself. But something else was changing too. The careful distance between Julian and Tessa was starting to crumble. It happened in small moments. His hand brushing hers when they both reached for the same dish at dinner. Her fingers adjusting his collar when it was askew. The way their eyes met across rooms and held for just a beat too long. The comfortable silences that stretched between them while Amber played nearby. One afternoon, while Amber was at kindergarten, Julian found Tessa in the living room, crying. Tessa? What's wrong? He sat down beside her on the sofa, concern filling his voice. She wiped her eyes quickly. I'm sorry. It's nothing. Just a tough phone call with one of my old clients. Tell me. So she did. She told him about a family she had been working with before taking this job. A single mother with 3 kids, struggling to keep them fed and housed. Tessa had just learned that the mother had lost her apartment and the kids had been placed in foster care. I feel like I failed them, Tessa said, fresh tears falling. If I had been there, maybe I could have found resources to help. Maybe things would be different. Julian took her hand in his good one. You can't save everyone, Tessa. As much as you want to. You're one person. But I'm supposed to help. That's my job. That's who I am. You're helping right now. You're helping Amber. You're helping me. That matters. Does it? Really? When there are so many others who need help. Julian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, let me tell you something about my wife. About Catherine. Tessa looked up at him. He rarely talked about his late wife in detail, usually just mentioning her in passing. Catherine was a doctor. Pediatric oncologist. She treated kids with cancer. And she was amazing at it. But it destroyed her bit by bit, watching those kids suffer, knowing she couldn't save all of them. When she got diagnosed with her own cancer, stage 4 from the start, she said to me, now I understand what the families feel. She had 3 months from diagnosis to death. 3 months. His voice broke. Tessa squeezed his hand. She spent those last 3 months writing letters to every patient she had ever treated, every family she had worked with. Hundreds of letters. Telling them how much their courage had meant to her. Telling them they weren't alone in their pain. And you know what I learned from watching her do that? What? That we can't save everyone. We can't fix everything. But we can show up. We can care. We can let people know they matter. That's what you do, Tessa. You show up. You care. You matter to people. Tessa turned toward him, tears streaming down her face. You matter too, Julian. You know that, right? You're not just a wealthy guy writing checks. You're a father who loves his daughter. You're a man who wants to make a difference. I'm trying. Some days I feel like I'm failing. Like I'm not enough for Amber. You're more than enough. She knows you love her. That's everything. They sat close together on the sofa, hands clasped, tears drying on both their faces. The vulnerability of the moment created an intimacy neither of them had expected. For the first time since his wife's death, Julian felt like someone truly saw him. Not as a CEO or a wealthy man or even just as Amber's father, but as a complete person with fears and hopes and wounds. And Tessa felt seen too. Seen for her heart, for her struggles, for the weight she carried trying to help a world that often felt too broken to fix. "Thank you," Julian said softly, "for being here. For caring about my daughter. For caring about me." "I do care," Tessa whispered. "More than I probably should." Their faces were close. So close. Julian's eyes dropped to her lips and Tessa's breath caught. The air between them felt electric, charged with possibility. Then Amber's voice came from the front door. "I'm home. Miss Tessa, Daddy, I got a star on my paper." They pulled apart quickly, both flustered. Patricia appeared in the doorway with Amber, who ran to show them her schoolwork. If Patricia noticed anything unusual, she didn't say so. That night, after Amber was in bed, Julian texted Tessa. "Can we talk tomorrow? Alone?" Tessa stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Yes." The next morning, they met in the garden while Amber was at school. The snow had melted enough to make walking possible, though the ground was muddy. They followed a stone path between the dormant flower beds. "I need to be honest with you," Julian began. "These past few weeks have been confusing for me. In a good way, but confusing." "For me too," Tessa admitted. "I find myself looking forward to seeing you every day. Not just because you're helping with Amber, but because I like being around you. I like talking to you. I like who I am when I'm with you." Tessa's heart pounded. "Julian, let me finish, please. I know this is complicated. You work for me. You're here because of unusual circumstances. But I can't ignore what I'm feeling. And I think maybe you feel it too." "I do," she said quietly. "I've been trying not to, but I do. So what do we do about it?" "I don't know. This isn't exactly normal." Julian laughed, a short, nervous sound. "Nothing about how we met was normal. You found my daughter in a snowstorm. I hired you to live on my property and take care of her. We're already way past normal. But what about Amber? What if things don't work out between us? I don't want her to get hurt." "Neither do I. So we go slow. We see where this goes. We don't tell Amber anything unless we're sure." Tessa nodded. "Slow. I can do slow." Julian stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something woody and warm. "Can I take you to dinner? A real date, not just talking after Amber goes to bed." "Yes," Tessa said, smiling. "I'd like that." That weekend, Ben, Julian's business partner, came over to watch Amber. Ben was a tall black man with an easy smile and 3 kids of his own. He brought them along, and soon the house filled with the sounds of children playing. Julian took Tessa to a quiet restaurant in the city, the kind of place with soft lighting and excellent food. They talked for hours, learning more about each other. Julian told her about growing up with parents who valued money over relationships, how he had vowed to be different with his own child. Tessa told him about her childhood, about watching her mother struggle but never give up. "You're the strongest person I've met," Julian said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "I'm not that strong. I cry a lot. Crying doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." After dinner, they walked through the city streets, not quite ready to go home. The February air was cold but not bitter, and the streetlights cast a gentle glow on everything. "I have a confession," Julian said. "What?" "That first day in the hospital when I saw you holding Amber, something shifted in me. I thought, this woman saved my daughter. This woman cares. And I wanted to know more about you. I wanted to know more about you too. You were this mystery man who loved his daughter so much that not coming home for one night nearly destroyed you. It did destroy me. Until you put me back together." They stopped walking. Tessa turned to face him fully. "Julian, I'm scared. I don't want to mess this up." "Neither do I. So we'll be careful. We'll be honest. And we'll remember that at the center of all this is a little girl who needs us both. Amber always comes first." "Always," Julian agreed. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But she didn't want to. She rose up on her toes and met him halfway. Their lips touched softly, tentatively, like a question being asked. The kiss deepened. Tessa's arms went around his neck, and Julian pulled her close with his good arm. The world fell away and there was only this moment, this feeling, this rightness. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Julian rested his forehead against hers. "I'm falling for you, Tessa Monroe. I'm falling for you too, Julian Pierce." They drove home holding hands, and when they arrived, Ben's kids had fallen asleep on the living room floor in a pile of blankets and pillows. Amber slept peacefully among them, her face relaxed and happy. "She had a great time," Ben reported. "Asked about you two about 100 times, but I told her you needed grown-up time." After Ben and his kids left, Julian and Tessa stood in the quiet house. "I should go to the guest house," Tessa said, though she didn't move toward the door. "Or you could stay a little longer." They sat on the sofa where they had shared tears just days before. This time they sat closer, Julian's arm around Tessa's shoulders, her head resting on his chest. They talked quietly about nothing and everything, and when Tessa finally did go to the guest house, it was almost 3 in the morning. She lay in bed, unable to sleep, her mind replaying the kiss over and over. She had fallen for him. Completely, totally, irrevocably fallen for Julian Pierce. And the amazing, terrifying thing was that he had fallen for her too. March arrived with sunshine and warmer temperatures. Julian's cast finally came off, and he celebrated by picking up Amber and spinning her around the living room. His strength had fully returned, and with it, a lightness in his spirit that had been missing for years. "I want to do something special," he announced at breakfast. "To celebrate. And to thank Tessa for everything she's done for us." Amber's eyes widened. "Like what, Daddy? How about ice skating? I have a private rink we can use." Tessa looked up from her eggs. "A private ice skating rink? You have your own rink?" Julian grinned. "It's at one of my office buildings. We use it for company events. But today it's just for us." That afternoon they drove to downtown to a tall glass building with the name Pierce Industries on the front. Julian led them to a basement level where a beautiful ice rink stretched out under bright lights. Music played softly from speakers, and the ice gleamed, freshly smoothed. "This is incredible," Tessa breathed. "I'm glad you like it. Here, I had them bring skates in your sizes." Amber squealed with delight as she put on her tiny pink skates. Julian helped her lace them while Tessa worked on her own. She hadn't been ice skating in years, not since she was a teenager. Julian went first, gliding onto the ice with the easy grace of someone who had done this many times. He reached back for Amber, who clung to his hand but followed him bravely. "Come on, Miss Tessa. Come skate with us." Tessa stepped onto the ice. Her feet immediately slid in different directions. She flailed, trying to catch her balance, knowing she was about to fall hard. Then strong hands caught her waist, steadying her. Julian was there, having glided over faster than seemed possible. "I've got you," he said into her ear. "I won't let you fall. I'm terrible at this." "No one's terrible at things they're trying. Come on, hold my hand." With Julian on one side and Amber on the other, Tessa found her balance. They glided slowly around the rink, Amber giggling every time Tessa's feet slipped. Julian kept up a steady stream of encouragement, his hand firm and warm around hers. After a while she got the hang of it. Not good enough to let go of Julian's hand, but good enough to move with something resembling grace. "You're doing great," Julian said. "I feel like a baby deer. A beautiful baby deer." Tessa felt her cheeks warm and not from the exercise. Julian's eyes held hers, full of affection and something deeper. Something that made her heart race. Amber skated ahead, confident on her own now. Julian slowed their pace, letting the child go ahead. "I've been thinking about something," he said. "What?" "About us. About what comes next. Your 6 weeks are almost up. The original agreement ends next week." Tessa's stomach dropped. She had been trying not to think about that. "I know. I don't want you to leave. Julian. Hear me out. Not as an employee. As something more. I want you in my life, Tessa. In Amber's life. I want to see where this goes. I want that too. But I have to go back to my real life eventually. My job, my apartment. What if you didn't? What if we figured out a way for this to be your real life?" Before Tessa could answer, her feet hit a rough patch on the ice. She started to fall, arms windmilling. Julian tried to catch her, but the momentum was too much. They both went down in a tangle of limbs, landing hard on the ice. For a moment they just lay there, stunned. Then Julian started laughing. Deep, genuine laughter that shook his whole body. Tessa couldn't help but join in, despite the pain in her hip from the fall. "Are you okay?" Julian asked through his laughter. "I think so. You." My pride is bruised, but everything else is fine. They helped each other up. Amber skated over, looking concerned. Are you guys okay? We're perfect, baby girl, Julian said. He pulled Tessa close and kissed her forehead. Absolutely perfect. The gesture was so natural, so comfortable that Amber didn't even blink. But something shifted in Tessa's understanding. This wasn't just a romance growing between her and Julian. This was a family forming. The three of them together. They skated for another hour, and by the end, Tessa was moving confidently on her own. She even managed a few turns without falling. Julian watched her with obvious pride and affection. That evening they ordered pizza and watched a movie at home. Amber fell asleep halfway through, curled up between them on the sofa. Julian carefully carried her to bed while Tessa cleaned up the dinner plates. When he came back downstairs, he found Tessa on the back porch looking out at the dark yard. He stepped out to join her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Cold? He asked. A little. But it's beautiful out here. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Julian said, I meant what I said at the rink. I don't want this to end. It doesn't have to. We can still see each other after I go back to my apartment. That's not enough. I want more. I want mornings with you. Evenings. Everything in between. Julian, we've only been dating for 2 weeks. I know. And I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm just asking you to think about staying. About making this more permanent. Tessa turned to face him. What exactly are you asking? Move in. Not to the guest house. To the main house. With us. As part of the family. That's a big step. It is. And I know it's fast. But Tessa, I haven't felt this way about anyone since Catherine died. You make me want to be better. You make me believe in love again. Tears filled Tessa's eyes. You make me believe in it too. But what about Amber? What if she's not ready for this? As if on cue, Amber's voice came from behind them. I'm ready. They turned. The little girl stood in the doorway in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Amber, honey, you should be asleep, Tessa said. I heard you talking. Miss Tessa, are you going away? I'm not sure yet, sweetheart. Amber walked over and took Tessa's hand. I don't want you to go. I want you to stay forever. You're like my mommy now. Not the same, but like a new mommy. Is that okay to say? Tessa knelt down, bringing herself to Amber's level. Tears ran down her face freely now. That's more than okay to say, baby. That's the most beautiful thing you could ever say. So you'll stay? Tessa looked up at Julian. He watched her with hope and love written all over his face. This man who had been a stranger just weeks ago, who had become so important to her so fast. Yes, Tessa whispered. I'll stay. Amber threw her arms around Tessa's neck. Julian joined them, wrapping both of them in his arms. They stood there on the porch in the cold March night, the three of them holding each other like they would never let go. Inside Tessa's chest, something that had been broken for a long time started to heal. The piece of her that had felt alone, that had wondered if she would ever have a family of her own. She had found them. Not in the way she had expected, but in the way that mattered most. She had found her home. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness. Tessa officially moved her remaining belongings into the main house, taking the bedroom next to Amber's. Julian called his mother in Paris and told her about the relationship. Margaret Pierce was thrilled and immediately began planning a visit to meet Tessa. Tessa quit her job at the social services agency, but not without bittersweet feelings. Her supervisor threw her a going-away party and made her promise to stay in touch. You're going to do amazing things, she told Tessa. I can feel it. With Julian's funding, plans for the community center moved forward rapidly. They found a perfect location in a neighborhood that needed resources. Architects drew up designs. Contractors prepared bids. Every evening, Julian and Tessa spread papers across the dining room table and worked together, shaping their shared vision into reality. But more than the center, their relationship deepened. They learned each other's rhythms, each other's quirks. Tessa discovered that Julian was an early riser who loved to watch the sunrise with his coffee. Julian learned that Tessa sang in the shower and couldn't cook anything more complicated than scrambled eggs without burning it. They went on dates. Real dates, with Ben babysitting Amber. Fancy restaurants and art galleries and concerts. But they also had date nights at home, making popcorn and watching movies after Amber went to bed, stealing kisses during commercials. Amber blossomed under their combined attention. She stopped having nightmares about being alone. She laughed more. She brought home artwork from school that showed their family, stick figures labeled Daddy, Me, and Miss Tessa. One evening in early April, Tessa found Julian in his office, looking at something on his computer with unusual intensity. "What are you working on?" she asked. He closed the laptop quickly. "Nothing. Just work stuff." "You're a terrible liar." He smiled. "I know. But this is a surprise. You'll have to wait." 3 days later, Julian announced they were taking a trip. "Pack bags for a week. Warm clothes. That's all I'm telling you." "Julian, we can't just leave." "What about Amber's school?" "Already cleared it with her teacher. Spring break started yesterday." "Come on, Tessa. Trust me." So she did. They flew to Paris on Julian's private jet, Amber bouncing with excitement the whole flight. A car met them at the airport and drove them to a beautiful apartment near the Eiffel Tower. Margaret Pierce waited at the door, a petite woman with silver hair and kind eyes that reminded Tessa of Julian's. She pulled Tessa into a hug before they were even properly introduced. "You're the one," Margaret said in a voice thick with emotion. "You're the one who brought my son back to life." "Mom, don't make her cry at the door," Julian protested, but he was smiling. That week in Paris was magical. They visited museums and cafes. They walked along the Seine River while Amber fed ducks. They ate croissants for breakfast and spoke terrible French to patient waiters. Margaret and Tessa bonded immediately, talking for hours about books and art and life. On their 4th day, Julian took them to a children's hospital, one of the facilities he funded through his foundation. Tessa watched him interact with sick kids, his natural warmth and kindness shining through. The children loved him. The staff called him a hero. "I had no idea you did this," Tessa said as they left. "Catherine started it before she died. She made me promise to continue. It's one of the ways I keep her memory alive for Amber." That night, Margaret kept Amber at her apartment for a sleepover. Julian and Tessa walked through Paris alone, the city lights glittering around them. They ended up at the Trocadero, looking out at the Eiffel Tower as it sparkled in the darkness. "I need to tell you something," Julian said. "Okay. I brought you here for a reason. Somewhere beautiful, somewhere meaningful. My mother is here. The city where Catherine and I got married." Tessa's heart started pounding. 3 months ago I was alone. Well, not alone. I had Amber and that was everything. But I had given up on finding love again. I thought that part of my life was over. Julian. Then you appeared out of nowhere in the snow, saving my daughter. And everything changed. You changed everything. He got down on one knee. Tessa's hands flew to her mouth, tears already forming. "Tessa Monroe, you walked into my life when I needed you most. You brought light and warmth and hope. You love my daughter like she's your own. You see me, the real me, not the wealthy CEO but just Julian. The man who's scared sometimes, who makes mistakes, who wants to be better." He pulled out a small blue box and opened it. Inside, a ring sparkled, a simple diamond on a gold band. "Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, Amber's mother, my partner in all things? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making you happy?" Tessa couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face. Behind them, the Eiffel Tower sparkled and shimmered, but she only had eyes for Julian. "Yes," she finally managed. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Julian stood and slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he kissed her, deep and passionate, pouring all his love into that moment. Around them, tourists clapped and cheered, but neither of them noticed. "I love you, Tessa," Julian whispered against her lips. "I love you too. So much." They held each other as the city glittered around them, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely way. A billionaire and a social worker. A widower and a woman who had stopped believing in fairy tales. Brought together by a little girl lost in the snow. The next morning they told Amber and Margaret together. Amber screamed with joy and jumped up and down. Margaret cried happy tears and kissed them both. They celebrated with champagne for the adults and sparkling cider for Amber. "When's the wedding?" Amber demanded. "Can I wear a princess dress?" "You can wear whatever you want, baby," Julian told her. "This is your celebration as much as ours. I want it to be soon. I don't want to wait to be a real family." Tessa looked at Julian and they both smiled. "How about this summer?" Tessa suggested. "That gives us time to plan, but not so long that we have to wait forever." "Perfect," Julian agreed. They flew back to the States 3 days later, engaged and happier than either of them had thought possible. The flight attendant brought them congratulatory champagne. Amber showed everyone her future mommy's ring. At home, life took on a new urgency. Wedding planning began in earnest. Tessa wanted something simple and meaningful, not a huge society event. Julian agreed completely. They decided on a garden wedding at their house, intimate and personal. But more importantly, the community center neared completion. The building took shape week by week. Walls went up. Rooms formed. Tessa spent hours there working with the contractors, envisioning how it would look when finished. "We should open it the same day as the wedding," Julian suggested one evening. "Make it a double celebration. The start of our marriage and the start of something that will help so many kids." Tessa loved the idea. One day, two beginnings. Exactly. As spring turned to early summer, everything fell into place. The community center got its final inspections. The wedding plans came together. Invitations went out to a small group of family and close friends. But through it all, Tessa couldn't quite believe her luck. She kept waiting for something to go wrong, for the other shoe to drop. She had spent so long helping others, watching them struggle, that having this much happiness felt almost wrong. Julian noticed her worry. "Talk to me," he said one night as they sat on their back porch. "I'm scared," she admitted. "This is all so perfect. Too perfect. What if something happens? What if I lose you like Amber almost lost you? Like she lost her mother? You won't lose me. I'm here and I'm staying here. You can't promise that. Life doesn't work that way." Julian pulled her close. "You're right. I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen. But I can promise that I'll fight to stay with you. I'll be careful. I'll cherish every moment we have together. And if something does happen, you'll be strong enough to handle it. Because that's who you are, Tessa. You're the strongest person I know." She leaned into him, breathing in his familiar scent. "I just want to be happy. For all of us to be happy. We will be. We already are." And looking around at their life, at the home they had built together, at the future spreading out before them bright with promise, Tessa finally believed him. They were going to be okay. More than okay. They were going to be happy. June arrived with perfect weather. Warm but not hot, breezy but not windy. The garden behind the house bloomed with flowers that Margaret had helped plant during her spring visit. White roses climbed up trellises. Bright red tulips lined the pathways. Everything looked ready for a wedding. The community center, which they had decided to call Hope House, stood finished and beautiful. The building had bright blue doors and large windows that let in natural light. Inside there were rooms for tutoring, a computer lab, a kitchen for teaching cooking classes, a space for art, and a counseling center. Everything a struggling child might need to find support and opportunity. Tessa stood in the main room 2 weeks before the wedding, looking around with tears in her eyes. Julian came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "You did this," he said. "You made this happen. We did this together." "True. But it was your vision. Your heart. I just provided the money. Money is important though. I could dream all day, but without resources, dreams stay dreams." Julian turned her around to face him. "That's why we make a good team. You have the vision and the heart. I have the resources and the business sense. Together, we can actually change lives." They had hired a staff for Hope House. A director, 3 counselors, 2 tutors, a part-time nurse, and a cook. All people who cared deeply about helping at-risk youth. Tessa had interviewed each one personally, making sure they understood the mission. The grand opening was scheduled for the same day as the wedding. Morning ceremony and ribbon cutting at Hope House, afternoon wedding in the garden. It was going to be a long, emotional day, but Tessa couldn't imagine it any other way. "Nervous?" Julian asked. "About the wedding or the opening?" "Both." "Terrified about both," she admitted with a laugh. "But excited too. Really, really excited." Ben, Julian's best friend and business partner, stopped by that afternoon to check on wedding preparations. His wife, Angela, a friendly woman with a warm smile, came with him. Their 3 kids immediately ran off to play with Amber. "I still can't believe this is happening," Ben said, shaking his head. 6 months ago you were alone and miserable, Julian. Now look at you." "I wasn't miserable," Julian protested. You were. You were going through the motions of life but not really living. Tessa changed that." Angela hugged Tessa. "We're so glad you're joining the family. Julian needed someone like you. Someone real, someone kind." "Thank you. That means a lot. And what you're doing with Hope House. That's going to change so many lives. I work with kids in the school system and I see the need every day. Having a place like this with qualified people who actually care? That's huge." They spent the evening together, eating dinner and talking about everything and nothing. Tessa watched Julian with his best friend, saw the easy affection and trust between them. This was the life she was marrying into. Good people, genuine connections, love and support. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and Amber was asleep, Tessa found Julian in his office. He was looking at something on his computer again, That same intense focus she had noticed before their Paris trip. More surprises? She teased. One more. Come here. She sat on his lap and he turned the screen so she could see. It was a legal document, pages and pages of text. What is this? Adoption papers. For Amber. If you want to, if you're ready, we could start the process after the wedding. Make it official that you're her mother, not just in our hearts but in the eyes of the law. Tessa's breath caught. Julian, you don't have to decide now. Think about it. But I wanted you to know that I want this. Amber wants this. We want you to be part of our family in every way possible. I want that too. So much. Then we'll do it. After the wedding we'll file the papers. In a few months you'll legally be Amber's mother. They kissed, slow and sweet, full of promise. Outside, the June night was soft and warm. Inside, their future was taking shape, piece by piece, moment by moment. The week before the wedding, Tessa's brother flew in from Germany. Marcus, a tall man in his army uniform, swept her into a bear hug at the airport. Look at you, he said, holding her at arm's length. You're glowing. I'm happy, Marcus. Really happy. Good. You deserve it. Now introduce me to this billionaire who managed to catch my sister's heart. Julian and Marcus hit it off immediately. They talked about business and the military and Tessa, sharing stories that made her blush. Amber loved having an uncle to play with. Marcus was patient with her, letting her climb on him and asking her endless questions about her princess dolls. He's good, Marcus told Tessa privately. I was worried when you told me you were marrying some rich guy you barely knew. But he's good. He loves you. I can see it. I love him too. And Amber. They're my family now. I'm happy for you, sis. Mom would be proud. That night, lying in bed, Tessa thought about her mother. About how hard she had worked, how much she had sacrificed. Her mother had died never knowing ease or comfort, always struggling, always worried about money. I wish you could see this, Mama, Tessa whispered into the darkness. I wish you could know that I found love and happiness. That I'm going to help kids like you helped us. I miss you. Beside her, Julian stirred. You okay? Just thinking about my mom. He pulled her close. Tell me about her. So she did. She talked about her mother's laugh, her strength, her determination to give her kids a better life. She talked about the day her mother died, how the world had felt empty without her. She talked about the guilt she still carried for not being able to help more, to ease her mother's burden. Julian listened without interrupting, just holding her, letting her process the grief that still lived in her heart. She would be so proud of you, he said when she finally fell silent. And she would be grateful that you're happy. That's all any parent wants for their child. Thank you for listening. Always. Your stories, your grief, your joy. I want all of it. Every piece of you. They fell asleep tangled together, and Tessa dreamed of her mother smiling, giving her blessing, telling her to be happy and not look back. The day before the wedding, Patricia threw Tessa a small bridal shower. Just close friends, nothing fancy. They ate cake and played silly games and laughed until their sides hurt. Angela gave Tessa a beautiful piece of advice. Marriage isn't about the perfect moments, she said. It's about how you handle the imperfect ones. The fights, the frustrations, the days when you're both tired and cranky. Those are the moments that matter. That's where you build your partnership. Tessa tucked the advice away in her heart, knowing she would need it someday. That evening, Julian took Tessa and Amber to see Hope House one last time before the opening. They walked through the empty rooms, imagining them filled with children. With laughter and learning and hope. This is where it all begins, Tessa said. Our marriage, this center, our life together. To new beginnings, Julian said, raising an imaginary glass. Amber copied him. To new beginnings. Tessa laughed and joined in. To new beginnings. They stood in the main room of Hope House, the three of them on the edge of something beautiful. Tomorrow would be busy and emotional and perfect. But tonight they had this moment. This quiet, peaceful moment of anticipation. And that was enough. The wedding was set for Saturday. On Wednesday, 3 days before, Tessa's phone rang early in the morning. Patricia's voice came through, urgent and worried. Tessa, I need to talk to Julian. Is he there? He's in the shower. What's wrong? There's a situation at the Paris office. A major deal is falling apart. He might need to fly there immediately. Tessa's heart sank. 3 days before our wedding? I know. I'm so sorry. But this could cost the company millions. When Julian got out of the shower, Tessa told him about the call. She watched his face as he processed the information, saw the conflict in his eyes. I have to go, he said finally. I'm sorry, Tessa. This is terrible timing. How long will you be gone? Maybe 2 days. I'll be back Friday at the latest. In time for the wedding. Maybe I should come with you. We could handle this together. Julian pulled her close. No. You need to stay here and finalize everything. The wedding, the Hope House opening. You have a million things to do. I'll go fix this problem and come back. I promise. So Julian flew to Paris that afternoon. Tessa spent the next 2 days in a whirlwind of activity. Final meetings with the caterers. Last-minute checks at Hope House. Picking up her wedding dress. Helping Amber with her flower girl dress. But underneath all the activity she worried. What if Julian didn't make it back in time? What if something happened to his plane? What if this was a sign that things were moving too fast? Thursday evening, Julian called her on video chat. He looked tired but excited. I have good news and better news, he said. Tell me. The good news is that I fixed the deal. The Paris office is secure. The better news is that I'll definitely be home tomorrow afternoon. Nothing is going to keep me from our wedding. I miss you. I miss you too. How's Amber? Excited. She's been practicing her flower girl walk for 2 hours straight. Julian laughed. That's my girl. Let me talk to her. Tessa brought Amber to the phone and the little girl chattered away about the wedding, the dress, the flowers, everything. Julian listened with obvious love and patience. After Amber went to bed, Julian called Tessa back privately. One more day, he said. Then you're stuck with me forever. I can't wait to be stuck with you. I love you, Tessa Monroe. Soon to be Tessa Pierce. I love you too. Friday arrived bright and sunny. Perfect weather for a wedding. Julian texted that he was at the airport, boarding his flight home. Tessa spent the morning at Hope House, making sure everything was ready for tomorrow's ribbon cutting. The building looked beautiful. Someone, probably Patricia, had hung a red ribbon across the front entrance. Inside, everything gleamed clean and new. Ready to welcome children who needed hope and help. Tessa walked through the rooms one last time, her heart full. Tomorrow this place would open its doors. Tomorrow her dream would become reality. Tomorrow she would marry the man she loved and officially become a mother to the child she adored. Tomorrow was everything. That afternoon Julian's plane landed. He came straight home, tired from travel but smiling. He swept Tessa into his arms and kissed her deeply. I made it, he said. Nothing could keep me away. I knew you would. I trusted you. That means everything to me. That evening they had a rehearsal dinner at the house. Just family and close friends. Ben and Angela with their kids. Patricia. Marcus. Margaret, who had flown in earlier that week. Everyone who mattered most. Julian stood and raised his glass. I want to thank all of you for being here. For supporting Tessa and me as we start this new chapter. 6 months ago I was lost. Then Tessa found my daughter in the snow and everything changed. She saved Amber that night. But really she saved both of us. He looked at Tessa, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Tomorrow I get to call you my wife. That's the greatest honor of my life. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for loving Amber. Thank you for being exactly who you are. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Tessa stood and kissed him, not caring who was watching. Later, after everyone had gone home or to their hotel rooms, Tessa and Julian stood in the garden where tomorrow they would say their vows. The moon shone bright overhead, and the flowers released their sweet scent into the night air. Are you ready for this? Julian asked. For forever? I've been ready since the moment I found Amber in the snow. I just didn't know it yet. Everything happens for a reason, doesn't it? All the pain we both went through, all the loss. It led us to each other. I believe that. I think our loved ones who are gone would want us to be happy. Your Catherine, my mom. They'd want us to choose joy. Then that's what we'll do. Tomorrow and every day after. We'll choose joy. They kissed under the stars, two people who had found each other against all odds. Tomorrow would bring a wedding and a ribbon cutting and the start of their official life together. But tonight they had this moment of perfect peace. Inside the house, Amber slept peacefully, dreaming of her princess dress and flower petals. In the morning she would wake up to the best day of her young life. A day when Miss Tessa would officially become her mommy. When their family would finally be complete. Everything was falling into place. Everything was exactly as it should be. Tomorrow would be perfect. Saturday morning dawned clear and beautiful. Tessa woke in her bedroom to find Amber already awake, sitting on the edge of her bed with her flower girl dress spread out beside her. Is it time yet? Amber asked, practically bouncing with excitement. Almost, baby. Let's have breakfast first. They went downstairs to find Julian already in the kitchen making pancakes. He wore jeans and an old t-shirt, his hair messy from sleep. Tessa thought he had never looked more handsome. "You're not supposed to see me on our wedding day," she teased. "That's an old rule. We're making our own rules. Besides, I wanted to make breakfast for my girls one last time as a bachelor." They ate together, the three of them talking and laughing. No nerves, no worry. Just joy and anticipation for the day ahead. At 9 a.m. the cars started arriving. Caterers, florists, the photographer. The house burst into activity. Margaret took charge of Amber, helping her get ready. Angela swept Tessa upstairs to prepare for the ribbon-cutting ceremony at Hope House. Tessa put on a simple green dress, bright and cheerful. Today wasn't about fancy wedding attire yet. Today was about opening Hope House and celebrating the community they were building. At 10 a.m. they all drove to Hope House. A small crowd had gathered outside. Local families, city officials, members of the press. Julian stood by the door in a blue suit, looking official and excited. The mayor said a few words about the importance of community centers. Julian spoke about his vision for helping at-risk youth, his voice strong and clear. Then he called Tessa up to say a few words. She stood in front of the crowd, her hands shaking slightly. "When I was growing up, my mother worked 3 jobs to keep my brother and me fed. We didn't have extra money for tutoring or activities. We didn't have access to counseling when times got hard. We survived, but it was a struggle every single day." She paused, looking at the building behind her. Hope House exists so that other families don't have to struggle alone. This is a place where children can come after school for help with homework, for a hot meal, for someone to talk to. This is a place where hope lives. The crowd applauded. Julian came to stand beside her, taking her hand. "Together," he said to the crowd, "we're building something that will last. Not just a building, but a community of care and support. Thank you all for being here to celebrate with us." They cut the ribbon together, the red fabric falling away. The doors opened and people streamed inside to see the facility. Children ran to the computer lab, the art room, the playground and back. Parents toured the counseling center and the kitchen. Everyone smiled, everyone celebrated. This was what love looked like in action. Not just romantic love, but love for community, for children, for making the world better. After an hour, they left Patricia in charge and drove back to the house. Now it was time for the wedding. Tessa went to her room to change. Her dress hung waiting, a simple white gown with lace sleeves and a flowing skirt. Not too fancy, not too casual. Perfect for a garden wedding. Angela helped her get ready, doing her hair in loose curls and her makeup natural and glowing. Margaret came in with a necklace. "This was Catherine's," she said softly. "She wore it on her wedding day to Julian. I think she would want you to have it. To wear it. You're not replacing her, Tessa. You're continuing the love in this family." Tears filled Tessa's eyes as Margaret fastened the delicate silver chain around her neck. "Thank you. This means so much. Thank you for loving my son. For loving my granddaughter. For being brave enough to accept this unconventional family." Downstairs, the garden had been transformed. White chairs sat in rows on either side of a flower-lined aisle. An arch covered in roses stood at the end, where Julian waited with Ben at his side. The afternoon sun cast everything in perfect light. Music started playing. Amber walked down the aisle first in her pink princess dress, throwing white rose petals. She took her job very seriously, walking slowly and carefully, making sure each petal landed just right. Then it was Tessa's turn. Marcus offered his arm and they stepped out into the garden. Every face turned toward her, but she only had eyes for Julian. He stood at the end of the aisle in a dark green suit, tears already running down his face. She walked toward him, her heart so full she thought it might burst. This was real. This was happening. All the pain she had survived, all the struggles had led to this moment. To this man, this child, this family. Marcus placed her hand in Julian's, then stepped back. The minister, an older woman with kind eyes, smiled at them both. "Dearly beloved," she began, but Tessa barely heard the traditional words. She was lost in Julian's eyes, in the love she saw there. "Julian and Tessa have written their own vows," the minister said. Julian spoke first, his voice thick with emotion. "Tessa, 6 months ago my daughter got lost in a snowstorm and you found her. But really I was the one who was lost. Lost in grief, in fear, in loneliness. You found me too. You brought light back into my life. You taught me that it's okay to love again, to hope again. You made me believe in second chances." He paused, wiping his eyes. "I promise to love you every single day. I promise to support your dreams and celebrate your victories. I promise to be there in hard times and good times. I promise to be the best husband I can be, the best father to Amber, the best partner in all our adventures. I promise to choose you always. Tessa's tears flowed freely now. She took a shaky breath and began her own vows. Julian, when I found Amber that night, I had no idea I was walking into my future. I had no idea that helping one scared child would lead to everything I had ever wanted. A family. A home. A love that feels like coming home. She squeezed his hands. You've given me so much. Not just material things, though the support for Hope House means the world. You've given me trust. You've given me partnership. You've given me a daughter to love and a life full of purpose. I promise to stand by your side always. I promise to love Amber as my own. I promise to be honest even when it's hard. I promise to choose joy with you, to build a life full of kindness and hope and love. The minister smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Julian pulled Tessa close and kissed her deeply. The small crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Amber ran forward and wrapped her arms around both of them. We're a real family now, she exclaimed. We've always been a real family, Julian told her. Now we just made it official. They walked back down the aisle together, the three of them, as the sun shone bright overhead. The photographer captured the moment. Julian in his green suit, Tessa in her white dress, and Amber between them in pink, all of them beaming with happiness. The reception was simple and joyful. Good food, good music, good company. Tessa danced with Julian, with Marcus, with Ben. Julian danced with Amber, who stood on his feet like she used to do when she was smaller. Everyone was laughing, celebrating, full of love. As the sun began to set, Julian led Tessa away from the party to a quiet corner of the garden. I have one more surprise for you. Julian, you've given me enough surprises for a lifetime. This one is special. Come with me. He led her to the spot where they had first met Amber, or rather, where Amber had appeared in their lives. The path where Tessa had found the little girl in the snow 6 months ago. Someone had placed a small bronze plaque there, embedded in the ground. Tessa read it aloud, her voice breaking. On this spot in the snow, a stranger became family. Where Tessa found Amber. Where our forever began. I never want to forget that night, Julian said. It was terrifying, but it was also the beginning of everything good. I want this marker here to remind us that sometimes the scariest moments lead to the most beautiful outcomes. Tessa wrapped her arms around him and kissed him with all the love in her heart. It's perfect. You're perfect. This whole day has been perfect. Our whole life will be perfect. Not every single moment, but the overall arc. Because we have each other. We have Amber. We have love. They stood together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Behind them, the party continued. Ahead of them, a lifetime of love and partnership and family stretched out, full of possibility. A year later, almost to the day, Tessa stood in the same garden with Julian and Amber. Snow fell gently around them, the first snow of winter. Amber, now 6 years old, laughed and tried to catch snowflakes on her tongue. Remember last year? Tessa said to Julian. When I found her in the snow? How could I forget? That night changed everything. Look at us now. Married. Happy. Running Hope House together. About to adopt Amber officially. Julian pulled her close. And don't forget the other news. Tessa smiled and placed her hand on her stomach, where a tiny life was just beginning to grow. How could I forget? Another baby to add to our family. Amber is going to be so excited to be a big sister. She already loves being part of this family. She's thriving. They watched Amber play in the snow, so different from the scared, lost child Tessa had found a year ago. Now she was confident, happy, secure in the knowledge that she was loved. You know what I realized? Tessa said. What? That night in the snow, I thought I was saving her. But really she was saving me. Saving both of us. Bringing us together. Giving us purpose and love and family. Julian kissed the top of her head. To think, if you had walked a different street that night. If you had been 5 minutes earlier or later. We might never have met. But I didn't walk a different street. I was there exactly when I needed to be. When we all needed me to be. Fate, Julian said. Or grace, Tessa added. Or just really good luck. Whatever it was, I'm grateful. Every single day I'm grateful. Amber ran over to them, her cheeks pink from the cold. Can we build a snowman? All three of us. Absolutely, Tessa said. And this time I won't just be Miss Tessa. I'll be Mommy. You've always been Mommy, Amber said matter-of-factly. The papers just make it official. They spent the next hour building a snowman in the garden where they had gotten married, where a marker now reminded them of how their story began. They laughed and played and loved each other, a family in every sense of the word. That night, after Amber was asleep, Julian and Tessa sat by the fire in the living room. Hope House had been open for 6 months and was already making a difference. 20 children came through its doors every day. Test scores were improving. Families were getting the support they needed. The dream was working. "We did it," Tessa said softly. "We built something that matters. We're just getting started. There's so much more we can do. More centers in other cities? Why not? We have the resources. You have the vision and experience. Together we can help thousands of kids." Tessa leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Julian Pierce. I love you too, Tessa Pierce. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for taking a chance on me and Amber. Thank you for being brave enough to open your heart again after losing Catherine. She would have liked you, you know. She would have been glad I found love again. That Amber has a mother who adores her. I hope so. I hope she's proud of the family we've built, the life we're living." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire burn. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the world in fresh white. But inside, everything was warm and safe and full of love. This was home. This was family. This was forever. And it had all started with a little girl in the snow, calling for her daddy. A stranger who stopped to help. A billionaire recovering in a hospital bed. Pieces that shouldn't have fit together but somehow did, creating something beautiful and unexpected and exactly right. Tessa thought about the scared, lonely social worker she had been just a year ago. Working long hours, struggling to pay bills, wondering if she would ever have a family of her own. That woman seemed like a stranger now. She had been transformed by love, by hope, by the courage to say yes when Julian asked her to stay. "What are you thinking about?" Julian asked. "How far we've come. How different everything is now. Better? So much better. Beyond anything I could have imagined." Julian stood and pulled her to her feet. "Dance with me. There's no music. We don't need music. We have each other." So they danced in the firelight, swaying gently, wrapped in each other's arms. Outside, the snow kept falling. Upstairs, Amber slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that she was loved. In Tessa's womb, a new life grew, a brother or sister for Amber, a new addition to their family. Everything was exactly as it should be. Perfect in its imperfection. Real and solid and true. This was love. Not the fairy tale kind with perfect people and no problems. But the real kind, built on trust and partnership and daily choices to show up for each other. The kind that weathered storms and celebrated victories. The kind that grew stronger with time. And it had all begun in the snow, on a cold December night, when a stranger heard a child crying and decided to help. That one moment of kindness had rippled out, creating waves of love and hope that would last a lifetime. Tessa had walked down that street by accident. Or maybe it wasn't an accident at all. Maybe it was meant to be. Maybe some higher power had guided her steps that night, knowing that a little girl needed saving and that in saving the child, Tessa would find her own salvation. "What are you smiling about?" Julian murmured against her hair. "Just thinking about destiny. About how everything worked out exactly right." "It did, didn't it?" "Yes. It really, really did." They stopped dancing and just held each other, grateful for this moment, for this life, for the love they had found against all odds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new joys. But tonight they had this. Each other. Their family. Their home. And that was everything. The fire burned low, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The snow outside piled up on windowsills and tree branches. And inside the house on Elmwood Drive, a family slept peacefully, dreaming of tomorrow and all the tomorrows after that. A family that had been born in the snow. That had grown through kindness and hope and love. That would last forever, built on the strongest foundation of all. Genuine care for each other and a commitment to choosing joy every single day. This was their happily ever after. Not perfect but real. Not without challenges but filled with love. Not a fairy tale but something better. A true story of second chances and new beginnings and the power of one person deciding to help another on a cold winter night. Remember, true love starts with a single act of kindness. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to this channel and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Your support helps me create more stories like this one. What do you think Tessa and Julian's future holds? Drop your predictions below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.